The first snow of December came in sideways. Sharp little flakes that looked innocent until they found a gap in your scarf and stabbed you right in the neck. Eleanor Pine watched it fall through the cracked window of her kitchen, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug that said, Tree Farmer of the Year, 1986. She was the only one left who remembered who gave her that mug. The year was still true, though. Pinehollow Tree Farm hadn't seen glory days since mullets were fashionable. Outside, the fields of evergreens leaned under the snow, rows of noble firs and blue spruces stretching toward the forest line. They used to shine under strands of golden lights every December, but this year the bulbs were dark. Eleanor hadn't had the heart, or the ladder, to put them up. The farm had been her life for 47 years. And now, with bills stacking up and her hip creaking like an old door hinge, she was ready to let it go. Ready might be the wrong word. More like, surrendering after a long siege. She was supposed to meet that developer. What was his name? Brickman? In 2 days. He wanted to modernize the property, which Eleanor suspected meant bulldozing it into oblivion and putting in a golf course or luxury cabins for people who thought rustic meant buying pre-distressed wood at Home Depot. Her phone buzzed on the table. It was her daughter, calling from the city again, voice bright and too loud through the speaker. Mom, you ready for the big move? Eleanor sighed. Move? I'm not dying, Lisa. Just selling some trees. You said you were going to sell the farm. I said I was considering it. There's a difference. Mom, you can't keep running it alone. It's not safe, remember last year? You fell off the hay wagon and… That was a strategic dismount, Eleanor interrupted, taking a sip of coffee. The wagon was going too slow. I got bored. Lisa groaned. Mom, fine, I'll think about it. You've been saying that since 2010. I've been thinking really hard. Before Lisa could lecture further, the back door slammed open, and a gust of snow, and 10-year-old enthusiasm, blew into the kitchen. Grandma, you won't believe what I found. Eleanor turned. There was her grandson, Tommy, bundled in a coat so puffy he looked like a marshmallow with legs. His hat was crooked, his face red, and he held up something in his mittened hands. It was a chunk of stone. About the size of a grapefruit, shaped like a gnome's head, pointy hat, round nose, eyes squinting in what looked suspiciously like judgment. I found it behind the old pine grove. Tommy said breathlessly. It's a gnome. And get this, the bottom says Gribble. Eleanor blinked. Well, I haven't heard that name in ages. You know him? Tommy's eyes widened. Is he real? Like, actually real? She chuckled. Not unless he's taken up residence in the septic tank. Your grandpa made that statue back when we first started the farm. Used to tell the local kids that a gnome named Gribble watched over Pinehollow. Like a protector? More like a tiny supervisor who never took breaks. Tommy examined the stone face closely. Do you think he really did, though? Watch over it, I mean? Eleanor smiled faintly. If he did, he's been on vacation for the last 30 years. Later that afternoon, the snow let up. The sun dropped behind the ridge, casting long blue shadows across the fields. Eleanor bundled up and went out to close the barn. The air was sharp enough to taste, like pine needles and wood smoke. She passed the row of older trees, gnarled, half-bald, unsellable now. One of them had a hollow at the base, the spot where her husband, Howard, used to hide the Gribble statue during Christmas parties to amuse the local kids. She crouched carefully, knees weren't what they used to be, and brushed away snow. The hollow was empty. That gave her pause. She'd been sure the statue had stayed buried all these years. She glanced toward the direction Tommy had come from earlier. Deep in the woods, shadows danced between the trunks, and she thought, just for a second, she saw a flicker of light. Like a lantern, only lower to the ground. Then, a clink. The sound of metal on wood. Eleanor straightened. Hello? Silence. Then another clink, followed by a muffled grumble. She took a hesitant step forward, heart thumping. If that's you, Hank Perkins, trying to steal my firewood again, I swear. A tiny voice interrupted her. I'll have you know, madam, I have never stolen firewood. I am fixing your disgrace of offense. Eleanor froze. She turned toward the sound. Near the base of the broken fence post, a small shape moved. No taller than a house cat. It wore a red cap, had a beard like spun frost, and was swinging a hammer about the size of a spoon. The creature looked up. Their eyes met. Well, the gnome snapped. Don't just stand there gawking. Pass me that nail. Eleanor did the only sensible thing a woman of her age could do in such a moment. She blinked twice, whispered, I need more coffee, and promptly fainted into the snow. When she came to, she was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of pine sap. Tommy was hovering beside her, face anxious. Grandma, you okay? You were out cold. I thought maybe you slipped on ice, but then I found your boot prints and another set of footprints, and they were, like, tiny. Eleanor sat up slowly. Tommy, she said, voice still dazed, you wouldn't happen to have any cocoa left, would you? He blinked. Yeah, but, with marshmallows? Sure, bring the whole pot. As he dashed off, Eleanor stared at the snow melting off her boots onto the rug. There was glitter in it. Not from decorations, actual glitter. Sparkling like crushed starlight, and outside, faintly through the frosted window, she could hear it again. Clink, grumble, terrible craftsmanship. Humans these days, no pride in their posts. Eleanor Pine, veteran tree farmer, widow, and staunch realist, rubbed her temples and muttered, "Oh, Howard. You better not have cursed this place with another one of your weird art projects." Eleanor Pine was not the kind of woman to believe in nonsense. She had spent decades knee-deep in mud, sap, and occasionally goat-related disasters. She'd seen frozen pipes, sleet storms, and once, a runaway tractor that took out half a row of Douglas firs like it was bowling for evergreens. But she had never, not once, seen a tiny man in a red hat arguing with a fence post. Which was why, the next morning, she decided to assume it was all a dream. A vivid, slightly judgmental dream, but a dream nonetheless. Until she opened her front door. Half her tools were missing. The broken gate was repaired, with craftsmanship that would have made her husband proud, and sitting on top of the fence post was a small note written in looping, old-fashioned script. Your nails are rusty. Your hammer is tragic. Buy better tools. Gee. Eleanor stared at it for a long moment. Then she looked down. Tiny boot prints again, marching straight across the snow toward the barn. Oh, for heaven's sake, she muttered, grabbing her coat. Inside the barn, things were worse, or better, depending on your perspective. Every tool had been reorganized with military precision. Hammers were lined up by size. The saws had been polished. Even the cobwebs were gone. A little wooden sign hung crookedly from a nail near the workbench. It read, "Under new management." A muffled grunt came from behind a hay bale. Then, blast these human-sized hinges. Who designs a door taller than a troll? Eleanor peeked over the hay. There he was. The gnome. Real as anything, beard sparkling like frost, red hat slightly bent at the tip. He was currently attempting to fix the stall door using a screwdriver that looked suspiciously like one of her knitting needles. Morning, she said carefully. Gribble froze mid-twist, then turned around, narrowing his eyes. Oh, it's you. It's me, she agreed. The one who owns this place. Technically, I'd say the land owns you, but we'll argue semantics later. He dusted off his hands and stood straight, about 10 inches tall and brimming with misplaced authority. Name's Gribble, guardian of Pinehollow Farm. You're late for work. Excuse me? The barn roof's sagging, the fence is disgraceful, and don't get me started on your lumber organization. Chaos, pure chaos. It's a wonder this farm hasn't been repossessed by squirrels. Eleanor blinked slowly. Are you real? Gribble snorted. That's my line. She rubbed her temple. I must be losing my mind. Unlikely, he said, inspecting a wrench. You humans don't have that much to begin with. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. You've got some nerve for a guy who's 3 apples tall. He pointed a tiny finger at her. 3.5. She leaned against the stall door. All right, let's just say, for argument's sake, that you're real. What exactly are you doing here? And why did you steal my hammer? Steal? He looked offended. I borrowed it to fix your fence. You're welcome. Your craftsmanship was an insult to trees everywhere. I didn't build that fence, my husband did. Well, then he should be ashamed, wherever he is. Eleanor stared at him, torn between outrage and laughter. You've got guts, little man. Gribble smirked. That's what they said back in the winter of '73. Of course, that was before the chainsaw incident. The what? Never mind, he said quickly. You wouldn't believe it. Let's just say squirrels should not be trusted with power tools. By the time Tommy came running into the barn after school, Eleanor was sitting on an overturned bucket, watching Gribble reorganize her toolbox while lecturing about proper nail ethics. Grandma, Tommy's voice echoed. Did you see it again? Eleanor opened her mouth to say something reasonable, like no, I imagined it, it was stress, you should probably call a doctor, but before she could, Gribble popped his head up from behind the bench. Oh good, the small human returns. Tell your grandmother to stop interfering with my work. Tommy froze. His jaw dropped so far Eleanor worried he might swallow snowflakes. You really exist. Of course I do, Gribble huffed. You think fences fix themselves? Honestly, what are they teaching kids these days? Eleanor sighed. Well, Tommy, looks like your grandpa's old bedtime stories weren't all nonsense. Tommy crouched down, eyes wide. Are you, like, magical? Gribble straightened. I am a certified guardian of earthbound wonders, protector of green realms, mender of wood, keeper of. Translation, he yells at boards and refuses to use power tools, Eleanor interrupted. Gribble crossed his arms. Because power tools are cheating. They're efficient. They're dangerous. Tommy giggled. You guys sound like the Muppets. Gribble scowled. I don't know who those are, but I'm sure I'd hate them. Eventually, the argument simmered down enough for Coco. Eleanor poured a cup for herself and Tommy, then hesitated. Do gnomes drink? Do we breathe? Gribble asked, offended. Of course I drink. Cocoa, cider, the occasional peppermint schnapps if it's a solstice. She handed him a thimble full of cocoa. He sniffed it, took a careful sip, and then made a face like a critic reviewing modern art. Too sweet. Needs more cinnamon. But drinkable. Sorry we didn't have your preferred vintage, she muttered. Tommy leaned forward. So, Gribble, why now? You've been gone for decades, right? Gribble's face softened, just a fraction. I was asleep, resting in the roots, as guardians do when their place no longer needs them. But I woke because. He hesitated. Something's wrong with the land. It feels anxious. Afraid. Eleanor frowned. Afraid? Of what? Gribble looked her dead in the eye. Change. That hung in the air like frost. She tried to laugh it off. Change is just progress. Progress is what you humans say when you're about to ruin something. That hit harder than she expected. Tommy looked between them. So you woke up to save the farm? Gribble nodded solemnly. Precisely. I'll whip this place back into shape before you can say, seasonal bankruptcy. Eleanor smiled despite herself. Good luck with that. I've been trying for years. Ah, but you didn't have me. He jumped down from the bench, landing with a faint thud. We start tomorrow. Dawn. Eleanor chuckled. That's cute. I don't get up before 8. Then you'll be late. That night, Eleanor lay awake listening to the wind rattle the shutters. Somewhere outside, faint metallic clinks echoed from the barn. The sound of a very small, very stubborn craftsman doing battle with a very large farm. She should have been worried, or confused, or calling someone who specialized in hallucinations. But instead, she found herself smiling. Maybe she wasn't ready to give up after all. If you'd told Eleanor Pine a week ago she'd be taking orders from a 10-inch tall construction foreman in a red hat, she'd have laughed so hard her dentures would have threatened to resign. And yet, there she was 7 o'clock a.m. sharp, standing in her barn, bleary-eyed, clutching coffee, while Gribble barked orders like he was running a military boot camp for squirrels. All right, troops, tool inspection first. Hammer, clean. Nails, sorted by length. Cocoa, hot and within arm's reach. Eleanor muttered, it's 7 in the morning. Exactly. The sun's up. The world's awake. Time to hammer destiny. Tommy bounced beside her, wearing a tool belt that looked about 3 sizes too big. This is awesome, Grandma. We're like gnome apprentices. Speak for yourself, Eleanor grumbled. I'm just trying not to get outpaced by someone who weighs less than a sack of flour. Gribble didn't hear, or ignored her, because he was currently wrestling a wrench larger than his torso. We begin with the roof, he announced, pointing dramatically toward the barn rafters. That thing's drooping like a day-old pancake. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. You planning to climb up there, or should I toss you up? Gribble puffed up. I have my methods. He whistled sharply. Out from the shadows scurried something. Tiny, furry, numerous. Eleanor blinked. Oh no. Oh yes, Gribble said proudly. My workforce. The squirrels had arrived. Now, if you've never seen a dozen squirrels attempt coordinated construction, count yourself lucky. They worked in what could generously be described as organized chaos. One ran off with a screwdriver, another used a shingle as a surfboard, and 2 were arguing over who got to hold the measuring tape, which they'd stretched between their tails. Gribble shouted directions like a deranged field general. Left, you furry buffoons. Left. That's not insulation, that's my hat. Stop chewing on the extension cord. Tommy was in heaven, recording everything on his tablet. Grandma, this is going to go viral. #DIY Gnome Edition. Eleanor was less impressed. They're going to go viral for rabies, if they keep chewing wires. After an hour of high-pitched mayhem, the squirrels finally scampered off, leaving the roof suspiciously better. A little uneven, sure, but it no longer sagged. Gribble brushed sawdust off his beard, looking smug. See? Flawless craftsmanship. Eleanor squinted. It's crooked. It's artistic asymmetry. It's going to leak. It won't if you believe in it hard enough. They spent the rest of the morning fixing fence posts and repainting the old farm sign. Or rather, Gribble repainted it while critiquing Eleanor's human-scale brush technique. You hold it like you're fencing, not painting. Loosen your wrist. Son, I've been painting since before your acorn was planted, she said, splattering green paint dangerously close to his hat. He gasped. You nearly destroyed my cap. This is enchanted cotton. Then it should have dodged faster. Tommy laughed so hard he nearly dropped his cocoa. By mid-afternoon, the farm looked, well, better. Still rustic, still weathered, but somehow livelier. The broken decorations were rehung, the paths cleared, and the old sign now gleamed. Pinehollow Christmas Tree Farm, family-run since 1976. And occasionally supervised by gnomes. Gribble might have snuck in that last line when no one was looking. As they stood admiring their work, a crunch of tires on snow drew their attention. A sleek black SUV rolled up the drive, shiny and smug as a penguin in a tuxedo. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Oh, for the love of fruitcake. The door opened, and out stepped Bradley Brickman, real estate developer, serial smirker, and wearer of unnecessary scarves. He adjusted his sunglasses and gave the farm a slow, unimpressed look. Well, he said smoothly. Still standing, I see. Barely. Eleanor straightened. Afraid so. Weathered a few storms, unlike your hair. Tommy snorted into his sleeve. Brickman's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm here to finalize paperwork. My investors are eager to begin clearing this property. The luxury lodge design is. Luxury lodge? Eleanor interrupted. You told me you wanted to preserve the rustic charm. I said that to get you to sign. From behind a snowbank, a faint voice muttered, oh, he's slimier than a wet mushroom. Eleanor glanced down. Gribble had emerged, glaring up at Brickman like a furious ornament come to life. Who is this sack of smug? Eleanor whispered, our problem. Gribble's beard bristled. Not for long. The meeting did not go well. Brickman refused to negotiate. He insisted the sale was inevitable, the farm was outdated, and small-town charm didn't pay the bills. Eleanor did her best to stay calm, but when he called the trees inventory, she nearly threw her coffee at him. When he finally left, she dropped onto the porch steps with a sigh that sounded like it had been waiting 40 years to escape. Tommy sat beside her. Grandma, you're not really going to sell, are you? She didn't answer right away. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in her gray hair. I don't know, kiddo. Maybe it's time. A small shape clambered onto the railing. Nonsense. Gribble crossed his arms. You can't let a man like that win. He doesn't respect the land. Or the trees. Or basic scarf etiquette. Eleanor sighed. And what am I supposed to do? The place is falling apart, Gribble. We can't compete with fancy resorts and plastic trees. Gribble looked around the fields, then back at her. Then we remind them what real magic looks like. Tommy perked up. Like, an event. A festival. People would come if it was something big. Eleanor frowned. We can't throw a festival. We don't even have working lights. Gribble smirked. You let me handle that. That night, while the snow fell thick and soft, Pinehollow Farm glowed faintly in the dark. Eleanor watched from her window as hundreds, no, thousands, of fireflies swirled through the air, landing on every branch, every roof, every fence post. The trees shimmered like constellations. Tommy gasped. Grandma, he did it. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Yeah, she whispered. He really did. Out in the field, Gribble stood with his tiny hands on his hips, grinning smugly. Now that's proper illumination, he said. And not one extension cord caught fire. By the next morning, Eleanor Pine had officially lost control of her own farm. The moment the first light hit the snow, Gribble was out there like a caffeine-fueled contractor, shouting instructions to a growing army of volunteers. And by volunteers, Eleanor meant 3 squirrels wearing tinsel, 2 raccoons dragging extension cords, a crow with suspicious leadership ambitions, and 1 deer who'd apparently just shown up for the snacks. She squinted through the kitchen window. Is that raccoon chewing on a string of lights? Tommy looked up from his cocoa. Yeah, but it's okay. Gribble said he's an electrician. Eleanor nearly spit her coffee. That thing's about to sparkle itself into the afterlife. Gribble's supervising. That's what worries me. Outside, Gribble stood in the center of organized chaos, wearing a high-visibility vest that was clearly made from duct tape and glitter. People, he bellowed, though the only people were woodland creatures and 1 very confused snowman. We've got 3 days to pull off a miracle. I want wreaths on the fence, cocoa stations by the barn, and music that makes mortals weep with joy. The crow cawed approvingly. Exactly, Gribble shouted back. Emotion, sparkle, a hint of cinnamon. The crow cawed again. Eleanor stepped outside, hands on her hips. You're talking to birds again. They're collaborators. They're flying rodents. Highly trained assistants. The deer sneezed, scattering fake snow everywhere. Eleanor pointed. That one's eating a roll of ribbon. Gribble sighed like a weary artist misunderstood by critics. You simply can't find good help these days. The plan, according to Gribble's hastily sketched blueprints, on the back of Eleanor's electric bill, was simple. Transform Pinehollow Farm into a Christmas wonderland before the weekend, host a winter tree festival, draw in the crowds, and remind everyone why real trees and small-town magic mattered. Tommy was in charge of promotions. Gribble was in charge of atmospheric enchantment. Eleanor was in charge of damage control. By lunchtime, half the decorations were up, the other half were in a tree, and one raccoon was stuck in a popcorn garland. Still, somehow, the place did start to look magical. Lanterns hung from branches. The paths twinkled with soft lights. The barn doors gleamed with fresh paint. The air smelled like pine needles and cocoa and mild panic. That evening, as the sun set and the snow turned golden pink, Eleanor stood back with her hands in her coat pockets. For the first time in years, the farm looked alive again. Not bad, she said softly. Gribble appeared on her shoulder. How he'd gotten there, she didn't want to know. You doubted me. I still do. But credit where it's due, you've got style. Style is 90% glitter and 10% audacity. Eleanor chuckled. You've got both in abundance. But peace never lasts long on a farm powered by chaos and gnomes. At exactly 7:14 p.m., headlights appeared at the end of the lane. A sleek black SUV. Tommy groaned. Oh no, it's him. Brickman climbed out, scarf fluttering dramatically like he thought he was in a cologne commercial. He took one look around and frowned. You're hosting an event? Eleanor crossed her arms. A festival. Locals are coming this weekend. It's free, and we're serving cocoa. Real cocoa, not the instant kind that tastes like disappointment. Brickman smirked. You think a few lights and cocoa will save this place? Before Eleanor could answer, Gribble popped out of the snowbank. You'd be surprised what cocoa can accomplish, Scarf Boy. Brickman blinked. What the hell is that? I, Gribble said, standing to his full 10 inches, am the head of operations. And possibly your worst nightmare, depending on how well you sleep with glitter in your socks. Brickman blinked again. It talks. Eleanor rubbed her temples. He's a friend. More of a mentor, Gribble corrected. Brickman looked between them, clearly trying to decide if he was being pranked. Well, mentor or not, you're trespassing. Gribble gasped. Trespassing? I've been here since before your grandpappy's grandpappy was in short pants. That's not even. Gribble cut him off with a stomp. You listen here, fancy scarf of doom. You can bulldoze your fancy resorts and pave your fake driveways, but you can't buy what's here. Brickman raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Gribble pointed dramatically to the twinkling trees, the glow of lanterns, the snow swirling in the soft light. Heart, he said, and about 40 squirrels with a union contract. Brickman scoffed and got back in his vehicle. We'll see how long this little fairy tale lasts. As his tires crunched away into the night, Tommy whispered, Grandma, are we really gonna pull this off? Eleanor looked out over the glowing trees. If we don't, we'll go down jingling. Gribble grinned. That's the spirit. Now, who's ready for Operation Cocoa Blitz? That night, Pinehollow Farm became a blur of activity. Tommy designed flyers. The animals strung lights. Gribble invented something called festive propulsion gel, which turned out to be hot cocoa and Red Bull. Nobody slept for hours. And in the middle of it all, Eleanor found herself laughing. Really laughing. The kind that makes your ribs ache and your heart lighter. 3 days until the Winter Tree Festival. Eleanor was up to her elbows in garland and half-defrosted cinnamon rolls when Tommy burst into the kitchen like an elf on espresso. Grandma, big news. Unless it's about coffee or fire, it can wait. No, it's huge. Brickman just posted on social media. She groaned. Does this involve the words, limited time luxury experience, again? Tommy flipped his tablet around. Sure enough, Brickman had posted a gleaming video ad showing his company's brand new Winter Pines Resort, complete with fake snow, fake trees, and what appeared to be plastic marshmallows. Eleanor muttered, if soullessness had a Yelp rating, that man would be 5 stars. Tommy scrolled. He's holding his event the same weekend as ours. Eleanor froze. You've got to be kidding. Nope. He's calling it a refined holiday for refined people. Refined? Eleanor slammed her spatula on the counter. Refined people don't need heated snow. From the cupboard came a muffled, oh, we're gonna hex this man's jingle bells off. Eleanor blinked. Gribble, were you in the flower again? He emerged from the sugar canister, dusted white from beard to boot. It was reconnaissance. Later that afternoon, they held an emergency meeting in the barn. Attendees included Eleanor, chairperson, unwilling but caffeinated; Tommy, tech wizard and social media strategist; Gribble, head of chaos, public relations hazard; 3 raccoons, snack committee; a squirrel named Kevin, self-appointed security detail. Eleanor clapped her hands. Okay, we can't let Brickman steal our thunder. Gribble puffed out his chest. Thunder cannot be stolen, only redirected. I don't even know what that means. It means, he said, hopping onto the table, we fight fire with fireworks. Literally. Eleanor frowned. We're not launching explosives, Gribble. Fine, fine, no fireworks. But we can make his event less appealing. Tommy's eyes widened. You mean sabotage? Gribble grinned mischievously. I prefer the term seasonal realignment. That night, while the snow fell soft and heavy, Gribble and his task force, Kevin the squirrel and 2 raccoons in scarves disappeared into the woods. Tommy whispered, what if he actually does something crazy? Eleanor sighed. Then I'll have to bail out a gnome. Over at the construction site for Winter Pines Resort, Brickman supervised the setup under a glowing floodlight. Every inch screamed money, fancy tents, gold-trimmed hot chocolate stands, fake snowblowers humming in the background. He checked his clipboard. Good. The LED tree arrives in the morning. Remember, folks, image is everything. From a nearby snowbank, 2 glowing eyes watched him. Gribble whispered, image, eh? Let's adjust that. Kevin the squirrel squeaked. No, we're not setting anything on fire. We're not that kind of operation. He crept closer, wielding a candy cane like a sword. The raccoons followed, dragging a suspiciously large spool of ribbon. Step 1. Replace the luxury lodging sign with something more honest. Step 2. Swap the recorded holiday soundtrack with Tommy's remix titled Jingle Smells. Step 3. Borrow the resort's cocoa supply for redistribution to deserving humans. By sunrise, the damage was done. The next morning, Brickman's pristine resort woke up to chaos. The giant LED tree was blinking, buy local, in neon green. The sound system blasted, Grandma got run over by inflation. And every cup of cocoa had been replaced with lukewarm kale smoothies. Brickman's scream echoed across the valley. Who did this? Somewhere, deep in the woods, Gribble was sipping cocoa and smirking. Justice tastes like marshmallows. Back at Pinehollow, Eleanor tried very hard to act surprised when the story hit the local news. The reported steed, vandals hit the Winter Pines Resort overnight in what officials are calling a holiday-themed protest. Eleanor gasped sarcastically, shocking. Absolutely shocking. Gribble, under the table, snicked. Despite the chaos across town, Pinehollow Farm was buzzing with life. Locals had heard about the gnome rumor, the magical lights, and the farm's comeback. People started bringing cookies, pies, cakes, more hot chocolate, games, crafts, and more to be used during the festival. Eleanor stood at the gate, blinking in disbelief. Wow, Tommy grinned. You went viral again. #Gnome for the holidays. Gribble twirled his hat. My public awaits. But just when everything seemed perfect, a familiar black SUV pulled up. Brickman, furious, snow-covered, kale-stained, he stomped up to Eleanor. You think this is funny? Depends which part you mean. He jabbed a finger at her. I know you did this. Me? I've been here all day baking cookies. Gribble whispered from her coat pocket, technically true. Brickman sneered. Laugh while you can. Tomorrow, you'll be history. He turned and stormed off, snow swirling dramatically behind him. Eleanor exhaled. Well, that sounded vaguely villainous. Gribble grinned. Don't worry. Villains always monologue right before they trip over their own scarf. Snow fell in fat, lazy flakes, like the sky itself had dozed off halfway through decorating. The farm was quiet, glowing with a soft golden light from the lanterns strung through the trees. Every branch glittered, every path sparkled. It looked less like a Christmas tree farm and more like the inside of a snow globe someone had shaken too hard in pure joy. And right in the middle of it all stood Eleanor, her breath curling in the cold. She couldn't stop smiling. I'll be darned, she murmured. We actually pulled it off. Behind her, Gribble emerged from the cocoa stand, face smeared with whipped cream. Pulled it off? We orchestrated the finest miracle this side of the North Pole's plumbing department. Eleanor laughed. You look like a holiday crime scene. He wiped his face with a candy wrapper. Miracles are messy. Inside the barn, Tommy was stringing the final lights. The place was cozy and alive, rows of Christmas trees wrapped in ribbons, tables of homemade crafts, and a choir of children rehearsing carols slightly off-key but absolutely full of heart. He called out, "Grandma! Check this out." He flicked a switch, and the entire ceiling of the barn lit up, tiny lights arranged in the shape of a snowflake. Eleanor gasped. "Tommy, it's beautiful." Gribble leaned in, squinting. "Bit symmetrical for my taste, but not bad." "Thank you, I think," Tommy said. "Don't thank me," Gribble said solemnly. "Thank the 2 raccoons who nearly electrocuted themselves for art." Eleanor smiled, her chest warm despite the cold. "They deserve hazard pay." Gribble nodded. "They've been compensated in marshmallows." Outside, the festival tents flapped softly in the wind. Cocoa was simmering, pies were cooling, and even the stubborn old tractor had been strung with lights. It should have been perfect. But there was something in the air, a faint unease beneath the sparkle. A change in the wind. A whisper through the trees. Gribble's pointy ears twitched. "You feel that?" Eleanor frowned. "The cold?" "No. The quiet. It's too quiet, even for snow." Tommy paused, listening. The woods around them were still, eerily still. Then, from the far side of the property, came a snap, a sharp, unnatural sound, followed by the distant rumble of an engine. Eleanor's stomach dropped. "Oh no." Gribble's hat tilted in alarm. "Oh yes." They raced toward the noise, snow crunching under their boots. At the edge of the field, floodlights glared through the dark. Brickman. He'd brought a crew, bulldozer idling, men in neon vests shivering and confused. He was shouting orders like a man possessed. "Clear the north lot tonight. The deal closes in the morning. I want the trees gone by sunrise." Eleanor's voice cut through the night. "Brickman." He froze, half turning. "Mrs. Pine, this isn't personal, just business." Eleanor marched up, fists balled, cheeks red from the cold and fury. "You're destroying my trees before the festival." "You mean my trees. I own this land now. You missed your final payment." Tommy stepped forward. "That's not fair. You changed the terms." Brickman's jaw tightened. "The world isn't fair, kid." From her pocket, a small voice hissed, "Oh, he did not just say that." Gribble leapt out and landed squarely in the snow between them, glowing faintly under the floodlight like an angry ornament. "Step away from the saws, you corporate fruitcake." Brickman blinked. "You again?" Gribble stomped his tiny boot. "That's right. And this time, you've woken something older than greed and twice as cranky." The air changed. Snow began to swirl, not blowing, swirling, like invisible hands stirring the air. The lanterns across the field flickered. Every pine tree shimmered, faintly golden. Eleanor gasped. "Gribble, what's happening?" He didn't answer right away. His expression softened, just a bit. "The forest remembers kindness, Eleanor. Even old kindness." Tommy's eyes widened. "The trees are glowing." And they were. Each one lit from within, soft and pulsing, like 1,000 beating hearts. Brickman stumbled backward. "What is this?" Gribble smiled. "This, my scarfed nemesis, is Christmas spirit. The real kind." The floodlights flickered out. The machines sputtered and died. For a heartbeat, everything was silent, then the wind began to sing. Not music, exactly, but something that sounded like it. A low, harmonious hum that made the snowflakes dance. Brickman stood frozen, face pale. Gribble walked up to him, looking almost gentle now. "You forgot, didn't you? What it feels like to believe in something that doesn't make money." Brickman looked down at the glowing snow. His jaw trembled. "I used to come here. When I was a kid." Eleanor blinked. "You did?" He nodded slowly. "My dad brought me. We'd cut our own tree. He loved this place." For a long moment, no one said a word. Then, softly, Gribble said, "Then maybe it's time you stopped trying to bury it." The glow faded. The snow settled. The engines stayed dead. Brickman rubbed his face, looking exhausted. "I'll make some calls. We'll hold off the clearing." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" He gave a small, rueful smile. "I think I needed a reminder." Gribble crossed his arms. "Good. Because if you'd gone through with that bulldozer nonsense, I'd have glued your shoelaces to a sleigh." By midnight, the farm was quiet again. The lights twinkled softly. The snow had covered the bulldozer tracks, leaving only stillness and starlight. Eleanor stood by the fence, watching the fields. "You think he'll really change?" Gribble hopped up beside her. "People are like snowflakes. Some melt slower than others." She chuckled. "You're not half bad, for a garden ornament." He smirked. "You're not half bad, for a human." Tommy ran up, grinning. "Grandma, it's fixed. Everything's ready for tomorrow." Eleanor smiled, wrapping an arm around him. "Then let's make it a night to remember." Gribble stretched. "And maybe get some sleep before I start glowing again. I think I'm still emitting festive radiation." As the moon rose high above Pinehollow, a gentle hush fell over the farm. The trees shimmered faintly, like they were whispering thank you. Tomorrow, the world would come. Tomorrow, there'd be laughter, cocoa, music, and miracles. But tonight was peace. Morning came softly, pale sunlight spilling over the hills, glinting on fresh snow like sugar dust. By 8 a.m., Pinehollow Farm was alive. Car after car rolled up the lane. Kids pressed their faces to frosty windows, gasping at the glowing trees. Music drifted from the barn, the smell of cinnamon hung in the air, and every breath sparkled like it was blessed with joy. Eleanor stood at the gate, bundled in her old red coat, watching the line of visitors with wide eyes. "Gribble," she whispered, "they came." He stood proudly on the fence post beside her, hat shining in the sun. Of course they came. Never underestimate the power of cocoa, community, and mild curiosity about a talking gnome. Tommy came racing up, camera in hand. "Grandma, we're trending again. People are calling it the miracle at Pinehollow." Eleanor chuckled. "Miracle, huh? Feels more like madness." Gribble grinned. "They're practically the same thing." Inside the barn, chaos had taken a festive turn. The choir sang slightly off-key, the raccoons were managing the cookie stand, badly, and Kevin the squirrel had somehow declared himself parking attendant. But no one seemed to care. The air buzzed with laughter and the occasional duck whenever snow fell from the rafters. It was imperfect and beautiful and real. Even Eleanor, who had spent the last decade worrying about bills, repairs, and loneliness, felt something new stirring in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or maybe just joy in its purest, most cocoa-fueled form. At noon, the big moment arrived, the lighting of the grand tree. The whole town gathered around as Eleanor climbed up on a small wooden stage, Gribble perched on her shoulder like the world's most opinionated ornament. She cleared her throat. "I don't know what to say except, thank you. For coming, for believing, for reminding me why this place matters." The crowd cheered. Kids waved candy canes. Someone in the back shouted, "We love you, Miss Eleanor." She laughed, blinking back tears. All right, enough of that, let's light this thing." Gribble nodded dramatically. Commencing illumination sequence. He snapped his tiny fingers. Nothing happened. A beat. Then another. Eleanor whispered, Gribble?" He snapped again, frowning. "Hold, please." Tommy snorted. "Did you forget to plug it in?" Gribble turned scarlet. "No, of course not. Probably." The crowd began to murmur. Eleanor's heart sank. "Oh no." Then, faintly, from the back of the barn, a small raccoon yipped. Lights flickered. Another yip. And suddenly, boom! The entire tree burst to life. Hundreds of glowing orbs cascaded up its branches like golden fireflies racing to the top. The lights swirled, spiraled, and sang, a soft chiming sound like bells in the snow. The crowd gasped. And at the very top, the star, a real, glowing, living light, flared to life, reflecting in every odd face below. Eleanor whispered, "Oh my stars." Gribble beamed. "We call that the delayed dazzle technique. Totally intentional." As music swelled, Tommy's video drone soared overhead, capturing the scene, the crowds laughing, the glowing trees, Eleanor hugging a group of children, the forest sparkling around them. He uploaded it instantly. Within an hour, it was everywhere. #Gnome for the holidays was trending worldwide. People from across the country watched the little farm that refused to fade, and in living rooms far and wide, families smiled, cried, and, just for a moment, believed in a little Christmas magic again. That evening, as the last guests trickled away and the stars came out, Eleanor stood by the gate, holding a cup of cocoa. The snow glowed faintly under the lights. The laughter still echoed softly in the distance. And then, headlights approached, slow this time. Brickman's SUV. He stepped out, no scarf this time, just a simple coat and an awkward expression. Eleanor folded her arms. "Come to bulldoze the joy out of the air?" He shook his head. "Come to say I'm sorry." She blinked. "You? Sorry?" He smiled weakly. "You were right. This place, it matters. My dad used to bring me here every year. I forgot what it felt like to be happy without buying it." Eleanor studied him, then nodded. Apology accepted. He hesitated. "If you're still willing, I'd like to invest, not to change it, but to help keep it running." From behind a fence post came a suspicious sniffle. Gribble popped up, pretending to clean his nose. "Just allergies. Definitely not emotion." Eleanor smiled. "We'll think about it." Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the world grew quiet, Gribble stood at the edge of the forest. Eleanor joined him. "You leaving?" He shrugged. "Gnomes don't stay where the work's done. We wander until the next patch of wonder needs mending." She smiled sadly. Well, you fixed more than my farm. He looked up at her, eyes twinkling. And you fixed more than one stubborn gnome's cynicism. She laughed softly. Take care of yourself, Gribble. He winked. Always do. And remember, if your cocoa ever stirs itself, I'm probably nearby. With that, he tipped his hat, stepped into the snow, and slowly vanished, his laughter blending with the wind. By the next morning, all that remained was a tiny footprint in the snow beside the fence and a single note tucked under Eleanor's cocoa mug. It read, "Never underestimate a gnome with a dream." Gee, she smiled, tucking it into her pocket. The farm shimmered under the sunrise, golden and alive. The season had changed, but Pinehollow would never be the same. If this little gnome warmed your heart, or made you snort your cocoa, give it a like. Hit subscribe for more funny, magical holiday stories where even the smallest heroes make the biggest difference. And remember, if your cocoa starts stirring on its own, it's probably Gribble.